It's time for Sound Off with Greg on AM 1290, FM 104.1, and Wkbkradio.com. To be part of the show, dial 357-1290. Agree or disagree, ask a question, or share information. It's time to Sound Off.
It is 10:07 here this morning in hour number 2 on Sound Off with myself, Greg Pregent, and Kyle Jarvis right here on AM 1290 and FM 107.5 and Wkbkradio.com. Thanks for joining us here this morning. This program brought to you by Elm City Bagels and Deli on West Street in Keene, right across from the Colony Mill Marketplace. You can always call us with your comments and questions at 357-1290 or email us at gpregent@wkbkradio.com and follow along our conversation this morning on Facebook. We want to welcome into the studio right now, we have George Hansel. He is a Republican candidate for Cheshire 8 in Ward 5 in Keene. And George, thanks so much for coming in here this morning.
Hi, thanks Greg and Kyle for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity, for sure.
Yeah, well, you know, political season coming up, and now I do know, obviously, in your race that there's not a primary race, so to speak, but it is a great opportunity now for folks to come into the studio and learn about some of the candidates. And you are one of those. You're kind of a new candidate here in Keene because you've never run for office before, have you?
Never run for office, but I have been getting out there meeting people for a couple months now, really, and trying to meet as many constituents in Ward 5 as possible, really introduce myself and give them the reasons why I think I'm the best person for this job.
All right, well, speaking about introducing yourself, now would be a good time to maybe let folks know kind of who you are. Sure. And a little personal information about yourself.
Some of my background, I grew up in New Hampshire, over in Derry. I went to high school at Holderness School in Plymouth, New Hampshire, and I've spent the majority of my time in New Hampshire. I went to college in upstate New York at St. Lawrence University, studied English up there. And then I came down and I went to our family business, Filtrine, and I've kind of moved up to national sales manager over there. So I'm responsible for growing business in the U.S. and abroad, and basically business development, relationship development across the country, developing plans for expanding markets for us, bringing new products to market, and capitalizing on those, following through on those plans.
So you've taken on a lot of responsibility, it sounds like, in that way.
I have. We have a lot of help. I mean, I'm fortunate to work with my 2 uncles and my father, and you know, so it's great working in a family business. We're really a success story for New Hampshire. We're growing fantastically in the past several years, and we've had some exciting, really neat things that I've worked on. One of the projects I've been working on recently is mobile filling stations for the military. We sell mobile filling stations and what they call tactical water chillers, which are basically used for our troops serving abroad to serve them water, to hydrate them. And the military found out that transporting disposable bottled water was really expensive and was really a logistical nightmare, and it's not the best thing to be flying pallets of bottled water all the way over to Africa or the Middle East or wherever. So we worked with a prime contractor, designed these mobile filling stations, implemented them in Djibouti, Africa at one of our main camps there. That's the main staging point for our operations in the Middle East. And in the first year, we saved them $1 million in bottled water, if you can believe that.
Wow. Well, and also too, I mean, just talking about, you know, all those bottles going in, you know, either not being recycled, just going into the local landfills, not a good thing also.
Right, not a good thing. And it comes back to like this new corporate responsibility that I think a lot of businesses, especially in New Hampshire, have. I mean, my uncle's great in implementing a lot of sort of green initiatives because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Okay, putting solar panels on our roof, retrofitting our test room so that it uses solar heat, you know, because we test chillers, medical chillers for MRIs and linear accelerators. So we use the sun to heat up the water for us to cool and test, you know, saving us electricity. And I think a lot of my experience in the New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility, which is a pretty big organization in New Hampshire, has really shown me that across the state, companies are doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Another thing pushing this initiative is everyone's on social media now. So, I mean, today you almost have to have a good moral position as a company in order to succeed. And companies are realizing that when they develop a culture where they work together, treat their employees right, and do the right thing, that it just enhances their business.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not here to talk about, I guess, business will.
Well, I think that gives an excellent idea, I think, to the listeners, though, that of your experience and what you're doing right now. So, what prompted you, since you've never run before, and this is kind of an off presidential election year, and what was your impetus to want to run for a seat and in the House?
Well, what really prompted me to run is, I'm running because it's time for a new generation of leadership. The people of Ward 5 deserve a real champion in Concord, someone who's going to stand up and get things done, work with both Republicans and Democrats towards long-term goals, ones that are going to set us up to be the economic powerhouse in New England, that's my primary goal going into the legislature, competing with our other New England states to make us the most attractive to businesses.
What are some of the ways, George, that you think that can be accomplished? What are the resources that we already have here, maybe, that you hope to capitalize on to achieve that goal?
Well, really, making the state a good state to do business involves several things. Really, it's like building a resume for a job or something like that. We're going to build a resume for the state of New Hampshire to attract businesses here. A lot of that has to do with quality of life. I mean, people want to work in a place that is very livable. They want to work in a place that has scenic beauty, where they have things to do. The other side of it, part of that resume, is supplying a good pool of workers for your company. You need to educate workers in state, keep them in the state, and make that applicant pool big and well trained. The other component is just having a friendly relationship with the state government, not an adversarial relationship between businesses and the legislature. I think that's really important. That's something that New Hampshire had in the 70s and 80s, this New Hampshire advantage, which is kind of one of those buzz phrases.
Sure, right, yeah.
But it was a real thing. I mean, my grandfather moved filtrine up here from New Jersey in the 1970s. We took over the wool mill in Harrisville.
Sure, okay, yeah.
And it was a really big move from New Jersey up to
Harrisville. I'm
which
sure,
was pretty remote, and it was set up as a wool mill, so there were multiple levels, and you had to move. We were trying to build chillers on different levels, and it was something. But he did it for reasons. He had good reasons to do it. One was, a fair tax structure to businesses. The second was not over-regulating, or, the state didn't seem to get in the business's space. They knew where their golden goose was, and they let them do their thing. They let them run their businesses. And then the other thing was living up here. The reasons why most of us live here. It's cold. You have to be tough, but there's a scenic beauty. There's just something about New Hampshire, and I think that plays a big part in attracting businesses here as well.
You talked about that New Hampshire advantage, and I think there's been a lot of discussion in recent years about, have we lost that advantage at this point?
I think we're, not to cut you off, but I think we're getting there. I mean, our GDP growth was less than 1% in 2013. That's slower than Mass, Vermont, or Rhode Island. Again, our competitors in the Northeast. And I really think it's important that right now we take a stand and we make sure that we take aggressive steps to become a leader in the Northeast. I think we can focus in on manufacturing, really. That would give us sort of a niche to market ourselves. There are other states in the U.S. that I think we're going to have a difficult time competing with manufacturing in, but in the Northeast, if we focus on that, we can utilize the brain power coming out of the greater Boston area, that entrepreneurial spirit that is alive and well kicking there, and I think people would come to start their manufacturing enterprises up here in New Hampshire.
How do you keep young people here, the talented people, the skilled people that you talked
sure.
about, needing them for jobs and for the future of this state's economy? What do you plan to do to encourage them, entice them to stay local and use their skills and resources here?
Definitely. I mean, we have a graying state, and that's another one of my priorities, is really to keep those students here. And one plan I have is a tuition reimbursement program. Basically, I think we're doing a good job of educating people here, but we need to make sure they stay and continue to work in New Hampshire after they graduate. So I would propose a tuition